case I can't string this together into one video, I guess this is going to be part 2. So basically where we left off, again, you have your brush, same brush, hard round, with opacity toggle on. Just continue to draw a more cleaned up sketch. And while you're doing it, just correct every little thing that you can. Look at your references. Add some stuff that you like. Now, if you're not intending to leave your line art in, you could just stick with this one, turn that into black and white, and just add paint on top of it or below underneath it. But if your intention is to leave the line art in, then do a much more cleaned up sketch. Another option from this, which is to turn off the toggle, so you can have like a really hard line art here, and then turn on your smoothing so that you can have more stability to it. Again, please watch the prior videos because I go over the brush tools a lot more in depth there. Basically, smoothing adds a bit more stability to your line art. So now I can just add completely like clean line art on top. And as I draw it in, I control the width using the pen pressure capabilities of your tablet. So, for example, from this end to this end here, I go thin, a little thicker, and fade out. Thin, a little thicker, fade out. See the difference between a more sketched out, clean sketch, or an actual dark line art. There you go. It's pretty good. See how much cleaner that tends to look now? So just basically for Christopher, just keep going on this way. Make sure you have establish your composition and your, your environment and your character before you move on to the rendering. Because if you just keep going on without having to do a more cleaned up or correct sketch, then you're basically gonna see later on, let's say 90% down, 90% finished. You're gonna be like, oh, something's wrong, something's not working, and then you're gonna have to work really, really hard to correct it. So might as well just start from scratch and correct it at the very start before moving on to the final, so that you can just take care of the whole brunt of it at the very beginning, and then just smooth sailing from there. Well, can't guarantee that, but a lot smoother sailing from there. Now, before I close out this video, and by the way, Christopher, this next part kind of pertains to the blocking in, so please allow me to just elaborate on that too. But the second part of this video is basically filling your line art. So let's say you do a line art like this, where you have a really nice sketch underneath it and you want to block it in. The one thing to remember is that you have to close the loop if you're using a paint bucket or a selection tool. So let me start a brand new layer, right? Brand new layer, and I'll draw somewhat of a circle. And I'll draw another circle where I will close that loop. Basically closing it here. So if I take a paint bucket and I fill it, basically the paint will come out of that area and it'll select the whole thing. And you don't want to do that. But the second one, since it's a closed loop, it's going to select the whole thing. So that's a really, really good way to just think about it. You have to close those areas in order to fill it in. Or else floodgates open and then the paint will come out and fill all the other areas that are open to it. The one thing I want you to also notice that paint buckets is great, fast, easy solution. It works better if you have, again, a high resolution. If you have a low resolution, it's gonna create like a weird halo effect. You can still see it here with a high resolution, but imagine in low resolution, that white parts that you see here, it's gonna be a lot more prominent. So in order to avoid something like this, even with a high resolution, I would like you guys to either manually paint those in. For example, since you have the shape on a separate transparent layer, create a brand new layer that you're gonna place underneath it, like this one, like layer 8, and just simply take a hard brush, opacity toggle off, so you have a really solid brush stroke, and just fill it in. If you do this, you don't have to worry about closing off areas, like you want to have a more organic illustration. And you close everything off. So, basically no more white, grayish halo around the edges here. Which makes it look a lot more professional, and it saves you a lot more trouble later, because since you have this on a separate layer, if you don't like it, you can just throw it away and your line art remains. You can throw it away, you can add stuff to it, keep adding layers on top of it. Separately, you can move it around. So it's better to do it like that. But if you're like me sometimes, I don't have time to just draw it in, use the magic wand tool. It's going to be the 1, 2, 3, 4th tool down, and you have to hold on it if you don't see it, and head down to magic wand tool, or click on W. Now this works only on the looped areas, like the second shape right over here instead of one with a gap. So what you want to do is to head to the layer where the drawing is, and then click on it. Click on the inside part, and as you can see, it selects the inside. I don't know if it's visible, but it has that little selection thing on it. The thing about this is, if you fill it, let's say create a brand new layer on top, you can fill it. It'll still somewhat create a halo effect, but it's a little bit better than just using the paint fill. And you have it in separate layers, which is a huge pro compared to just using the paint bucket tool. But the better way to do this is to go back to the magic wand tool, click on the inside of it, head to select, modify, expand. So let's expand it by 2 pixels. So if you look at the edge, it's 2 pixels if you have a much more high resolution. And you can see the selection expand and move upwards into like the drawing itself. So now if I take a brand new layer, I fill it, it's filled in towards this line, covering every single thing underneath. See how much better that is? You're not going to have that white halo effect, and you're going to have a more professional edge to it. So let me demonstrate that again. Magic wand tool, select the layer that you have the drawing or the line art in, click on it, you have to go to Select, Modify, Expand, and expand by 2 pixels, 3 pixels, however it takes to get to outside the edge, outside of the inner edge. And then you can create your brand new layer underneath or on top. Maybe underneath's better, so you can hide it. And just fill it in with a paint bucket tool. Command D to deselect, and there you have a much nicer block in. I'm going to touch upon this in another video because it's really, really important. It's a really good tool to use. But there is something called a lock transparency and a clipping mask. So basically, lock transparency allows you to take a shape like this on a separate layer. And if you head to the lock here, it's the very first lock where there's like a checkerboard pattern. Click on that. If you click on that, you lock your layer into that lock transparency, which means if I paint, let's say blue, it only stays within the shape. If I use green, it stays within the shape. The bad thing about this is that if you lay your colors down or you know, whatever colors, brush strokes, if you lay it down, it'll permanently stay onto that shape. That means you have to hit Command Z to undo it or paint it out completely. One thing that Photoshop allows you to do now, though, is to use something called a clipping mask. It's basically like a lock transparency, except it allows you to use the layers. So, in order to do that, here's our layer. Let me just unlock it. Here's our layer. What you want to do is to highlight it, create a brand new layer so it automatically creates it on top. And then we put this blue piece here. So you can see that it's on top of it. Now you want to do is hit Option Command G or Alt Control G for the PC to create a clipping mask. So basically it makes it into a sub layer to the main layer, which is this layer. So it clips it into this layer. So now you can basically start adding in your colors into that separate layer. The great thing is you can move it around. You can start a brand new layer underneath it to create another clipping mask. Maybe I want to add, let's say, red, like a pastel-y red color. So it's independent of each other and it stays within the shape. So this is really, really good, especially when it comes to, you know, rendering individual shapes or forms. You guys are going to be doing the basic shapes assignment, so this is a really, really good idea to kind of get to learn. So you can render the forms like the cylinder, the sphere, the cube, and the cone much easier. So basically draw the shape and then render within that shape using either the lock transparency or the clipping mask. Alright, that's pretty much it. Again, this serves as both a critique as well as a demonstration video for everybody. So, yeah, a couple more days until the project 1 is due. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. I'll try to get to you as soon as I can. Alright, thanks everybody.